I found this in Guangzhou, where they've interviewed three scholars, Wang Shida, Liu Zongyi, and Lan Jiangshu. And they've interviewed it, very extensive interviews. And this is for the domestic audience. Remember this. It's in Chinese. I think this is now translation. So let's go one by one. Now, this guy talks, Wang Shida, who's the executive director and researcher of the South Asia Institute of China Institute of Modern International Relations, basically in Sikar, China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. He writes extensively on India. So what has he written? You have to understand this. You know? So let's see what he's written, and I'll explain to you because this is not going to be a flashy kind of a video. I'm going to put out to you what they have written, of course, in shorter form, and then we'll analyze each of their vyakyas. And this guy has spoken about, see, the heading is India's multilateralism. That's the thing. In China, they call it multi-way alignment, but we call it multilateralism. He says between multilateralism and non-alignment, there's no difference. It doesn't mean that India is neutral or unbiased. He says, look, in the US Soviet, Cold War, India chose the side of Soviet Russia. So India knows when to, go towards a person. But multilateralism, as per his understanding, means that India will not take a formal alliance with any country. And any alliance or alignment is issue based and based on national interest. That's his way of thinking it. So far, so good. Nothing wrong with it. But here comes the malice. He says India can only play a second role. And India will always be treated as a second-rate power by the West. Okay. It will also be treated as a second-rate role by the Eastern Bloc or the Soviet Union, and now as an extension Russia. Now, he says India, by refusing to join any alliance, aims to increase its influence in global South. And of course, India tries, apparently, as per him, to act as a balance between USA and Russia, but acts with opportunism between China and USA. So this is a very important thing which he said. He says India does the balancing act between USA and Russia. But when it comes to China and USA, India is opportunistic. I'm repeating it. And then, of course, he says whether it can really achieve strategic autonomy and avoid self-damage or that to get harm itself is a question mark. He's leaving it in the thing, look, India will not be successful. He's telling this to his audience that India will not be successful. Please understand this. Then he's talking of anxiety and self-awakeness in US diplomacy. That is the change in the diplomatic scene which has happened in US. And this is Liu Zongyi. He is the director of the South Asian Research Center of Shanghai Institute of International Studies. These are all their best think tanks. And these are the guys who constantly write about India. They shape Chinese opinion on India. Please understand this. I keep saying you need to know what's on the other side of the hill. This is part of that story. So what does he say? He says the most important relationship is with USA. Right? India's relationship. And India is very eager to seek, close cooperation with Trump and his administration. Why are they doing it? India seeks to gain a key position in the Indo-Pacific strategy of USA. They're very clear. Okay? And then he says the Indian political and strategic circles. So all the thinkers of India, the leadership in India, the thought leadership or the political leadership are opportunistic. They want to take advantage of USA and its attempts to contain China. So this word opportunistic keeps repeating itself. So they feel India is opportunistic. Okay, wants to make use of an opportunity of the problem between USA and China. So this is a recurring thing. Okay, then what else he say? He says the Biden administration was pro-India as per his assessment, and at that time, India became a non-treaty partner of USA. He says at some places, India behaved more than a strategic partner, but it was more like an alliance. Certain things which India did were beyond an alliance, and that's a fact. That's a fact. Now, India expected greater support to replace China in the global supply chain immediately after the pandemic. That's what he's talking about. And he says India also expected greater support for its Atmanirbharta program, self-sufficiency, and in weapons and equipment. But USA has not helped them. He says that, and India hopes that USA will respect our domestic policy and foreign strategic autonomy. And as per him, USA is completely against it. Possible. Maybe last year it was so, but today things have changed. But this fellow has written it today. So they have a mindset on this. Now, he says, what about Trump 2.0? And India, of course, in the context of India always. He says, USA has always used India as a tool to suppress China. Okay? And Trump 2.0 does not have a place for India. Trump has no place for anyone as per China. So in the overall thing, he says, India's strategic visions have become difficult to achieve. What does the previous chap says? India will not become strategically autonomous, or its whole story of being multilateral without harming itself will not be successful. This fellow says India's strategic visions have become difficult. And he also says in the foreseeable future, the relationship between India and USA will become difficult. Why? Reciprocal tariffs, immigration issue, and all that. As per him, these are bigger issues. They're wrong. We know that. But how does the common Chinese know about it? The common Chinese will believe what these chaps have written. Like I said, this is for internal consumption of Chinese people in Chinese or Mandarin language. And what about the India-China relationship? There's increasing negativity and imbalance. And that's in trade, economy, everything, the whole lot. And that's right. But the negativity is ours or theirs. We are being open with them. And there's only subterfuge we get from China. But well, he's a Chinese, he's writing for Chinese audience, so it looks like that only. And then he gives this lengthy thing, Updesh. Only by truly adhering to the independence of diplomacy and truly formulating foreign policies in the line of their own national interests and people's well-being can we truly achieve no tension. At the time of increasing turbulence and uncertainty in the world, now New Delhi should be more sober. कुछ और ही बोल रहा है. He is giving you उपदेश कि भैया तुम हमारे साथ आ जाओ. Okay, and you should work in our national interests or your national interests, जो भी है, for the people. So what we are doing is not for our people. He expects us to do what he thinks is right? For his people, they want us to do for our people. You see, this is all part of the thing which they're projecting internally to say that India is doing something which is not for its people. Remember that. Okay. The third, and the heading of this chap is, what is the key to becoming a global power? That's what he's spoken of. You see, that paper also took interview of these three different guys on three different topics. You get the different thinking that way. He's Lan Jiangshu. He's a director of the Asia Pacific Research Institute of Chinese Academy of International Studies. And these are some of the best think tanks of China. People say that you'll see trollers saying, oh, we don't bother about India, we don't think of India. No, they do think. It's just that it's not apparent to many of us. Yeah, 80% of their focus is on Trump and all that and internal. But you see, a whole lot of things. And when did I last speak of China? About 10 days back. In 5-10 days back, I'm getting you the view. I'm getting you the views of the 5 or the 6 top analysts of China. There are 5 principles of strategic positioning of India. And he says India's goal has been to be a great power ever since the time of Nehru. He says India pursues global leadership. That is in the current international order. He says India is the self-announced or self-proclaimed leader of global South. And it displays its strength in the global South. India wants to become the bridge between the global South and the global West, or the global North, whichever way you call it. Between the West and the global South. India wants to be the bridge. Okay. And Mr. Jaishankar wants to portray India as a Southwest power. South and the West power. Part of South and part of the West. Further, he says India sees itself as the hegemon of South Asia and the net security provider of the Indian Ocean. And it has a self-image of being a global spiritual mentor. And it highlights the Hindu characteristics of its diplomacy. Yeah, now he come to the negativity. So far, so good. I will give it to them. But now comes the thing. He says the positioning and practice of Indian diplomacy have not achieved the expected effect. Sorry. That India has not achieved anything. So they're again showing India down in front of their own eyes. Or rather, eyes of their people. Okay. And this is the longest interview, very relevant. So that's why I've taken 3-4 slides for this fellow. Because India's relations with neighbors are in constant turbulence. He talks of China, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Myanmar. Thus, with everyone, they're in constant turbulence. Okay. The elites of Indian politics. This is a very interesting formulation, actually, this slide. Let me tell you. I'll go a little deliberately here. Some of you have said, it's good to watch General Shankar's videos in 1.2 speed. That's okay. But I need to be deliberate. That's where you get clarity of thought. It says the elites of Indian politics don't attach importance to being with the neighbors, or they are not around with the aspirations of people who are around them. So we are not with the neighbors, and we don't meet the aspirations of our neighbors. That's what now he is very clearly putting out. Well, let me digress a bit here. Okay. Per se, that's the case. But our neighborhood is a troubled neighborhood, and it has been so not now, from ever since. I mean, ever since we can remember, it's been a troubled neighborhood. At the same time, this is not decrying the fact that China's troubled is peaceful. They have fights now with everyone in South China Sea, India, Taiwan, Philippines, Japan, South Korea, even North Korea. So, what is so great? Everyone's. I mean, this is like the kettle calling the pot black. But then he's giving it to his internal audience. That's why the malevolence. See, they're painting the worst picture of India. Achha, this is another interesting thing. He says India, we go by Kautilya's theory and doctrine, which he calls as Kautilyanism. Now, here he says, as per Kautilya's principles, neighboring countries are natural enemies and neighbors of neighbors are your natural friends. That's what Kautilya said. No? He says, if that is the attitude, you treat all your neighbors as enemies. So India treats everyone as its enemies around it, and it treats people who are far away as its friends, as per Kautilya. This is, he says, is completely against the Chinese way, which treats everyone around it as its friends. That's what he's projecting. And then he goes on to say that India controls all its neighbors who are weaker. But then there's a problem here. He says India's social and economic development is not up to the mark. And this is one of the reasons why there is no progress in harmonizing its relationship with the neighbors. That is our weakness is transposed to the others. Again, this is very funny. I mean, I don't understand. We have helped people. Just think whether it's Nepal or Bhutan or Sri Lanka now, or even Bangladesh when we had to help it. We've helped. Even Afghanistan we are helping. And we tell them, look, we are grown and we want you to go along with us, and that's our neighborhood first policy. Many people say it has failed. I don't think it has failed. I feel our neighborhood is troubled. So in a troubled neighborhood, you will always have to cope with uncertainty and turbulence. Right. So this is something which you have to understand again, that negativity which is being shown. And this is now about India-China relations. Now, India has a great power dream. So because of that great power dream, its relationship with China is complex and can't go further. He says India should not consider China as an obstacle, but a favorable factor for joint economic and social development. That means that's the olive branch. But what this social and economic development is, we'll talk of it. Before I finish, I'll talk of it. And he says the essence of the India-China relationship is how should these two large neighbors get along with each other with their huge populations. He is here parroting what Wang Yi says. And he says development is the only convention between India and China. And India and China should correctly grasp the historical trend and the development direction of the two country relations, trust each other, support each other, and achieve each other's goals. Big talk. But in all these three analysis, one thing is missing. What is that missing? The core issue between India and China. Why are India and China at loggerheads with each other? Border. 62 war. They have usurped complete accession. That is not spoken of. For them, they are not interested. These days, after the meeting in Kazan between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping, and they pull back. They have just stopped talking of the border. Nowhere have they spoken of the border. They are now talking of other things. The positioning is completely different.